Welcome to the Elon University AI Hub. I'm Pierson Norris, and today in our AI in Action series, we will be interviewing faculty and students showcasing the use cases of artificial intelligence. We are looking how to generate custom HTML or website links utilizing Gemini to organize your Moodle pages. Today, I am joined by Dr. Katelyn Walls from the Love School of Business. Dr. Walls is using AI to create a point-and-click interface for her students, making it easier for them to navigate and access their course materials. Now, let's go take a look at her workflow.
Yeah.
Okay, and then next I have a few interview questions for you.
Yeah, definitely.
So just getting started, how frequently do you use AI in your role in business analytics, and what's the primary purpose in your day-to-day workflow?
Yeah, so in my actual professional capacity, I love using generative AI to make students' experiences better. So for example, you just saw the HTML in Moodle. A lot of it is creating those point and click buttons that I think make it a lot easier for students to access their materials for the course. Specifically for the Management 3100 course, I love using Gen AI to create scenarios, for example, real world scenarios, so that I can manipulate, exactly what I want to accomplish in that specific example. So if we're learning about linear regression, there are some classic examples like predicting house prices. But let's say that I wanted to demonstrate, sales, right? So I can come up with a whole scenario using generative AI, so that I can demonstrate a specific concept.
Okay, perfect. And then in your experience, what are the most significant benefits and limitations when using AI in your work?
Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit in class. There are definite benefits in that it definitely, how do I want to phrase this? Has the potential to speed up a lot of things. For example, I do not know HTML code, right? I do know how to code in Python. So once you know one code, it's generally easier to, look at and learn a new code. For example, I've been learning HTML through doing the examples in Moodle. But when it comes to, for example, in the classroom, generative AI has some limitations of being overly complex for what that specific class is trying to accomplish. Yeah. So Management 3100, I really want to put in the concepts of the Python basics. So I have those paper mini projects. Then we sort of discuss generative AI and its limitations, as well as what it can be used for. For example, how to specifically prompt generative AI to give you exactly what you want. Of course, that background knowledge, of course, is what you have to have. So talk about in class how you have to say, oh, I need a pandas data frame that is called this, right? I can't, otherwise it's just the default DF, right? Yeah. Or you have to say, for example, I specifically want Python code, right? Just like out in Gemini, I had to say, I specifically want HTML. Because otherwise it makes a lot of assumptions, right? Generative AI relies a lot about assumptions. And like in my class at the very beginning, we do the peanut butter and jelly example. Yeah. Assumptions can really get you in trouble.
Yeah, be very specific when using AI. And then what are some gaps in your AI knowledge that you've identified? And what resources could the AI Center provide to help bridge that gap for you and or other students in your or other teachers in your department?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest limitations comes with Moodle specifically. I know they're looking at examining whether to include generative AI in Moodle. And so I haven't heard a lot about that, so I'm interested to know more. I think it needs to be implemented, of course, with, well, what is it actually good? Is it not good? Looking at the pros and cons of everything. Yeah. And so, like I said, I think it's been beneficial, at least in this area. Of course, I think, teaching students about how to use it, when to use it, and its, of course, limitations, I think is the biggest importance.
Yeah. One of the biggest things actually we're trying to go teach students is AI is a tool, but for a lot of stuff, when you use AI, you spend too much time on it because you end up going through a rabbit hole. It's like, when do you actually use it? When do you actually not need it? And then how do you efficiently go through and use that?
Exactly. Yeah, in linear regression, ChatGPT and all of them love to use sklearn, right? I specifically use stats models because you get that whole output and you're able to see the coefficients and everything. Whereas with sklearn and linear regression, it gives you where you have to like print out the coefficients in another cell, and you have to print out the R squared in another cell, and so on.
Yeah.
So in terms of like best practices or ease of use, it could use a little bit of work.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. And then how has AI changed the way that you've approached teaching, learning, and your leadership decisions?
So I think it's specifically in regards to teaching. I think it's made me a better teacher, which I don't know if a lot of people would say that. But like I said, I don't know any HTML. And so when it comes to, making Moodle more accessible and easier to understand, in that regard, it's helped immensely with teaching. I know when you were in my class, you're like, wow, look at this Moodle page.
Yeah.
And so at least in that specific regard, I think it's helped. In other regards, I like coming up with different examples and sort of using it as a sandbox to look through new types of pedagogy that I want to implement. For example, peanut butter and jelly example that actually came up through generative AI. Because I was thinking, what can I do to demonstrate that we're missing assumptions when it comes to, programming? And so I was, brainstorming with generative AI. I'm trying to remember at that point. That was, I think, Gemini as well. And they're like, oh, you could talk about, making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I was like, that's really simple. And who doesn't love a teacher making a fool of themselves? So.
Yeah. And then for good context, when we were doing the PB&J, you had 2 pieces of bread,
Yep.
and you had to fully explain how to go do it. So when you go through all the steps, if you miss like putting on the peanut butter and putting them horizontally, and it's being very hyper specific about all the directions. So when you miss those directions, especially using AI, you get a lot more hallucinations and stuff that you don't want. So it's be specific, and a really good example that you've used.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. And then 5th question, what guidance would you give students or professionals who are beginning to use AI responsibly and effectively?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is to sort of understand how it works. I don't think you have to get into, neural networks and everything, but having a basic understanding of, how it works initially. So keeping it high level and at least engaging in that. I think what a lot of people also miss is privacy, cybersecurity. I think that's the biggest issue nowadays. And so before even attempting to use any, generative AI, I think it's also worth it to at least read about privacy and where your data is going and whatnot. And I know what's coming up now is also the environmental concerns with the data centers and whatnot. So I think it's also important to look at that and recognize within yourself, the pros and cons of everything.
And actually talking about data security, a really good example is if you're using your regular ChatGPT, even if you pay for Pro, and you're uploading stuff for your company and stuff like that. I heard there was another guy at a different company. They were acquiring that company, and they were looking up some of the stuff on how much they were acquiring it and stuff like that. And it pulled from somebody else's thing who they were getting acquired, and they were saying that they want to get acquired for X amount and Y amount. So they purposely did all the stuff, and it was a lot lower than their expectations. So,
Wow.
Having 2 different open chat GPTs, you can access other people's data because it learns from it. So we got to make sure, all that is enclosed.
Exactly. Especially when you do, and I'm thinking specifically in code, if you're, creating a database, knowing yet conceptually you have to hash the passwords, right? Whereas if you're like, build me a database for customers, right? Just using that as a simple prompt, not being specific at all, then you're going to run into some issues in the business.
Yeah. And then which AI tools have had the greatest impact on your workflow and why?
Ooh, man, I try to use all of them. Right now, I'm actually really into Notebook LM for both research, and they've been doing video overviews. Actually, I'm implementing that for the first time.
Okay.
So in Business 2110, which is the MIS course, I can choose resources that I want to talk about and put them into a short form video. So it's about 6 to 8 minutes long, and it's specifically the sources that I choose so that I can have sort of a a backwards teaching method where, students look at the video before class, answer some questions about it. So at least coming into class, they conceptually know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. And this notebook LM that you're talking about, we actually will be going over it for students and for faculty. It's amazing. I love Notebook LM.
It's fantastic. The audio overviews, you can literally jump in and talk to the podcaster co-hosts and talk to them or ask them questions. You can create quizzes, you can create video overviews, you can create slides, which I've been creating slides recently, and they're actually pretty awesome. The only thing I'm waiting for is that they're editable. They aren't yet, but I heard it's on the up and coming.
Yeah. I think now with Gemini, they're gonna absorb Notebook LM at some point and have that integrated as the study mode or stuff like that.
I think that'll be, invaluable for students because they can upload all of the course material, or professors can create their own notebook or wherever it's going to go in the future. You can literally select the sources that you want, create a quiz based on that, or create slides or create the podcasts so that you can actually interact with them.
Yeah, and these podcasts, by the way, are so amazing. You can choose how many people you have and how they want it to teach you. I love taking a super large stuff that I learned in class, popping in an audiobook version of it and just relearning all the stuff when I'm doing something else.
Right. And it's fantastic too, because with, teachers and everything, you can explain it one way, right, in class, and you'd have another person talk to you. But sometimes you just need it, 2, 3, 4 times, differently, spelled out, and then you're going to get it. And so this just offers another option to students who are trying to understand a concept.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. And then, that's all the questions that I have for you, Professor Walls.
Beyond Moodle design, we also discussed using AI to brainstorm classroom examples like the peanut butter and jelly exercise for coding assumptions and the use of Notebook LM for student study resources. Thank you to Dr. Walls for sharing how she uses these tools to support her teaching. You can find the full interview and related resources in our February newsletter on the Elon AI Hub. We will see you in the next video.